for Margaret?
No.
I can let her in when she gets here. The live stream starts now, and the scheduled meeting is for past. But I'll keep an eye on the participants.
So good evening.
She's here now, Madam Chair.
Oh, fantastic. Excellent. Good.
Yeah, we're all here now, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So good evening, fellow councillors, and welcome to this Policy and Finance Committee meeting. We are being live streamed on YouTube via Zoom, so welcome to anybody who's actually tuning in. It would be great to see you, but you can see us, so best smiles, everybody. With regards to the meeting, could I ask you to remain on mute unless you are invited to speak? If you could indicate by using the raised hand, that would be brilliant. But if I don't notice you, then just wave frantically at me and that will be fine. You can raise your hand usually by clicking on the participants button and then going to reactions, and that will indicate to me that you wish to speak. But as I say, if I don't spot you, just please wave frantically. So do we have any apologies for absence this evening?
We just have Councillor Hopkins, Madam Chair, and Councillor Willis is her substitute.
Excellent. Welcome, Councillor Willis. Declarations. To record declarations of interest by any member of the council in respect of the agenda items listed below. Members declaring interest should identify the agenda item and the type of interest being declared. Are there any declarations of interest? No, I would like to declare an interest in item number 7, in so much as the Beverley Male Voice Choir practice and hold concerts at the church, Tolgapple Church in Beverley, of which I am a member. So this is a non-pecuniary interest. Are there any dispensations to be declared in respect of any of the agenda items? No, thank you very much. Then we move on. Agenda item number 4, to note the minutes of the Policy and Finance Committee held on Monday, the 18th of January 2021, previously approved at full council on Monday, the 22nd of February. You can refer to these minutes on pages 16 of 49 of the minutes of the previous full council meeting. Thank you. Now we move on to payments. Just to say that as of the next few weeks, our Deputy Town Clerk will be recognised as a corporate administrator by the Yorkshire Bank. At the moment, as you know, councillors very kindly are signing off cheques so that we can pay our bills and we can pay our staff. So there might be just one more round of checks before we are able to conduct this business automatically. Could I ask if anyone has any queries with regard to any of the payments? Councillor Pinder.
I just wanted to ask, is All Star a card? Do we have a card on that? And if we do we have to record it as such? You know how we're supposed to have, you know, the credit cards or debit cards, they've got to be itemised. I suspect it might be something like a fuel card or something, but I just wonder if we're supposed to, if it is, and if it is, whether we're supposed to identify it as such.
Deputy Town Clerk, you can answer this question.
Yeah, it's the fuel card for the van to ensure that only people who have the card can purchase fuel on it. We don't have to identify it as a credit card because that's the administration fee for having the card. Any petrol that is both additional is separately receipted.
Okay, that's fine. I just wondered whether procedurally we're supposed to identify cards. That's fine.
Thank you, Councillor Pinder. You will, of course, note that we have closed the Christmas lights account and transferred money over to the current account, and the same with the events account as was recommended by our auditors. This will make reporting on accounts much easier going forward, and will make the workload, certainly of our financial officers, much lighter. So thank you to our officers for facilitating this and ensuring that we meet with our auditor's recommendation. Thank you. Item 6.
Sorry, Madam Chair, I know it's a technicality because we've already signed off the checks, but I just need a proposer and a seconder to approve the tips in item A.
Okay, can I have a proposer for these accounts, please? You will agree that we did agree that most of these could be automated going forward. So Councillor Halsey to propose. Seconder. Thank you, Councillor Jack. Can we have a show of hands, please? We all agree. Thank you very much. I cannot see Councillor Astell. Thank you, Councillor Tom Astell. Thank you. That's carried. Thank you, Deputy Town Clerk. Policies and procedures. The reason we've put this onto the agenda is to comment that with regard to the scheme of delegation, it does need a total overhaul. It needs a review. I think it's the only policy that we have not reviewed in the last year or so. There are needs to we are needing to make alterations with regards to grants, but until we have agreed on the strategic partnership grants and the paperwork which is coming up in agenda item 7B, then we will not be able to review the scheme of delegation. So that was really all I wanted to say, just to ensure that councillors were aware that that with regard to the scheme of delegation, it will require a review. Councillor Pinder.
Yes, it will, and I think we also need to be mindful, if we look at one particular aspect of it, if we vote in a new scheme of delegation, we are bound by that for 6 months. So we need to make sure that if we're voting, even if we're only looking at one aspect of it, we've got to be sure that we're happy with all the rest of it. I do also want to raise this point about the Personnel Committee, because I'm not satisfied that the Personnel Committee is operating within the scheme of delegation. I raised this concern before, that it's a council within a council. I've got several concerns. One is that at the beginning of the meetings, there's a blanket exclusion of the public. Now, you can only exclude the public in very particular circumstances. If it's sensitive, confidential to individual members of staff, which would affect GDPR, absolutely. If it's confidential, absolutely. But I don't think you can just do a blanket exclusion of the public at the beginning of any meeting. Also, I'm in minute 36, I think it's minute 3620. The Personnel Committee agreed a contract with, is it JR Holdings? That's not a Personnel Committee matter. That's a contract for services. That's not employment. That should have come to PPS. So, I'm also concerned with scheme of delegation. There were no Personnel Committee meetings between the end of June and July and the beginning of November. Who was making decisions? How were they being recorded? I do have serious concerns about how the Personnel Committee is being conducted.
Councillor Healy.
Thank you, Chair. I'm grateful to Councillor Pinder for raising what is an important matter, the Personnel Committee. It is a key priority for me that the Personnel Committee strikes the correct balance between public accountability and transparency on the one hand, and staff confidentiality on the other. And we have been asking Erlica to ensure that we help us get that balance right. Personnel Committee meetings, by their very nature, deal with confidential issues relating to identifiable employees. The meetings could be dealing with all sorts of issues, such as annual appraisals, grievance issues, misconduct issues, capability issues, staff training needs, recruitment issues, and other matters of a personal nature relating to identifiable employees. And almost every subject discussed by the Personnel Committee, every conversation is touching upon all of these things. And therefore I think it's inappropriate for such meetings to be conducted mainly in open session. But Councillor Pinder's right in the sense that members of the public and other councillors are entitled to address the Personnel Committee. And in theory, and we need to make sure that this follows through in practice, they do have an opportunity to address the committee at the start of the proceedings. But then should be asked to leave. And I think it's important that this process is followed in future, with live streaming commencing and public entitled to be there before personnel confidential issues are discussed. However, I think the key decisions, I mean, this is the important point, and I know Councillor Pinder will agree, that key decisions made by the Personnel Committee are of public interest, of interest to councillors and to the general public. And the minutes of personnel meetings, insofar as they relate to such key decisions, should be transparent and clear for all concerned, as indeed I believe that they are. So an example I want to give is the Personnel Committee meeting of last week of the 24th of February, which did take key decisions. For example, on the principle, Councillor Pinder refers to this contract, the committee took a decision on the principle of outsourcing maintenance services to third-party contractors, and that was then referred to onto the PPS. And Councillor Pinder is absolutely correct. That decision as to which contractor to appoint is not a matter for personnel; it's a matter for PPS. The Personnel Committee considered the principle of it because that particular role was previously carried out by an employee. So therefore, the principle of changing that to a contractor was a matter for the Personnel Committee. But I can assure Councillor Pinder that no decisions on the appointment of said contractor were made, and that has been referred to PPS, which will decide and deliberate at its next meeting. That meeting on the 24th of February also took key decisions on the staff performance and appraisal process, including the adoption of a staff performance assessment form and a timetable for the staff appraisal process. This is a matter of public interest and councillor interest, of course. And the decisions, and this is the key thing, the decisions that councillors make at Personnel Committee need to be transparent and documented on the minutes of the meetings. That's the bit where the accountability is really there, and the minutes need to reflect the open and transparent manner. So yes, we had discussions around contract, the principle of the contract. We had discussions around an appraisal process which we've put in place. That is clearly a matter for everybody to know about. When these minutes come out, and they are about to come out, I believe that they will reflect the open and transparent manner in which the Personnel Committee made these decisions. I've always said this council is about openness, and I always want to live by that. And if people have concerns, it's absolutely correct that they raise them. And I appreciate that Councillor Pinder's raised them. On the matter of the regularity of Personnel Committee meetings, councillors will know that under previous administrations, the Personnel Committee met maybe only 3 or 4 times a year at most. There are not always key decisions to make. However, this new Personnel Committee of 2 years ago took the view that meetings should be diarised monthly as an example of good practice, but with the understanding that we wouldn't meet for the sake of meeting, but that we'd cancel meetings if they were unwarranted due to prevailing circumstances and lack of a substantial agenda. hence the lack of meetings last summer during the period that Councillor Pinder refers to. It was the gap between meetings was no more than it normally would have been had we not taken a decision to have meetings when and as and when they were necessary on a monthly basis. So I just would sum up by saying, as chairperson, I'm grateful for the matter being raised. I'm not going to hide from it. We can always improve the way that we do things, and we should never shy away from that. I'm grateful for the interest that Councillor Pinder has shown in matters relating to the Personnel Committee. And I can give her my assurance that the balance between public interest accountability and staff confidentiality is being properly addressed, as I'm sure she will see when she reads the next set of the Personnel Committee minutes. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Healy. Councillor Pinder?
Yes, I thank Councillor Healy for his answer. I appreciate that the matter of the contractor has been referred to PPS. I think that's absolutely right that it should do so. And I hear his comments and I agree with most of them. I do reiterate my concerns. I was aware that there were in the background, there were a number of personnel matters that did occur in the period between the end of July and the beginning of November. I think it's just a reference to all of us as councillors that there's an absolute stricture that no one councillor can act alone, and we all are all accountable to one another. And there is an issue of liability, and which I'm very well aware of. So I just wanted to raise that. I thank Councillor Healy for hearing my concerns and answering them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pinder. So with regard to the scheme of delegation, there is clearly work to do on that, and I would hope that we would be able to work on it in the same way as we've worked on other policies, collaboratively, openly, so that we can improve our practice going forward. It occurs to me as well that we do not actually have an environment and sustainability policy, and I think that is something that we need to be put on. We promised ourselves when we became the new council all that time ago, it seems forever, that we would be a cleaner and a greener council, and yet we don't have an environment and sustainability policy. If anyone is minded to put their thoughts down as to what should be included in such a policy, I wonder if they could write to our administrator, who will collate those suggestions, and then we can look to providing a green policy that works entirely for us as Beverley Town Council. I'm open to suggestions. If anybody would like to comment on that now, then I'd be delighted if you would express an interest. Councillor Pinder.
Yes, I was going to make a suggestion regarding the scheme of delegation that would apply to this, is that maybe we can ask the different committees, including full council, to include an agenda item in which they specifically look at the scheme of delegation as it relates to that committee and come up with observations, and also to look at this issue as well, because it will affect different committees in different ways.
Is that a proposal, Councillor Pinder?
I would propose that all committees have A, the scheme of delegation, and B, green policies and sustainability issues as an agenda item.
Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Healy?
Seconded.
Yeah, thank you. And can we all vote on that? I think that's a great way that we can all go forward. Thank you. Thank you, that's carried. So if we could move on to agenda item 7, this is with regard to Town Council community grants, and specifically if we could move to a grant that's been received by Beverley Male Voice Choir. Now, as I've expressed an interest in this, I don't believe that I can chair this this section of the agenda in an unbiased way. So I would like to pass the chairing of this over to the chair of the Grants Committee, which is Councillor Horsley. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. You've all had the details of the grant application. Now, those of you who've been careful to look at dates will realise that this application was made at about the point, well, the original application was made just before COVID restrictions began. We then changed the rules somewhat to make it possible for any grants whatsoever to be given. And we asked those, every group which had made an application to update their application so as to make it possible for us to make a decision on the issue. Now, the fact is, the only group which actually did update its application in that way was the Male Voice Choir. Unfortunately, the reviewed application somehow or other fell between the gaps. Whether it was a problem at their end or our end is not clear, but it did fall between the gaps, and we didn't actually discover it until a long time after it was sent. There is no doubt whatsoever, because we did look at the question of the application, there is no doubt whatsoever that it would have met the requirements that we had for applications at that time, and that since the money was available, we would have been likely to have granted the full sum of £1,000. At this stage, it doesn't seem there is any way to do that except by bringing it to this committee and saying, can we make the full grant in acknowledgement of the fact that under the rules pertaining at the time, they would have had the full grant, and that our only way of remedying this situation is to give it to them now. I think that's the sense of what we're doing. Would Matt like to comment?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Grant, Chair. Yeah, the Male Voice Choir contacted me a couple of weeks ago to ask, what was happening, because things had been put in abeyance from last year. And I've been through the emails. I could not find any evidence that they'd sent their additional page to us when we asked applicants if they needed to change what they'd applied for because of COVID to let us know on a side of A4. However, they've been able to prove to me that they did send an email. So somewhere in the middle, something's happened and it's not got through. So in good faith, they sent it. In good faith, we didn't receive it. And rather than arrange an extraordinary grants meeting, I liaised with the chair of both grants and policy and finance. It seems sensible to bring it to this meeting. And again, a lot of work's been done since to renew our grant system with a new policy in place. But as Councillor Horsley said, they applied via the old form through the old system. To be fair, councillors need to consider how things were rather than how they are now. So I'll help if I can at all. We'll hand over back to Councillor Horsley.
Right, thank you, Deputy Clerk. Does anybody wish to comment on this or to ask any question about it?
Councillor Horsley, you've got Councillor
Tom Maskell. Yes,
thank you,
thank
you, Councillor Horsley. I just wanted to propose that we accept the application and award the funds.
Right, is there any second?
Councillor Horsley.
Yes.
Councillor Horsley, you've got Councillor Pinder waiting as well to speak.
All right, so I shall take Councillor Pinder before we come to a vote, certainly.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, my screen has for some reason steamed up. Councillor Pinder.
I have this effect on finance committees. Yes, anyway. What I'm saying, we actually have two limbs. I don't think we can go straight to accepting this proposal, which I think is great. It's one of the few occasions when I'm happy to hear more male voices. They're wonderful people. We have two, as Councillor Horsley has set out very clearly. First of all, we have to agree that we can do this and a mechanism by which we can do it, given that it didn't come to grants. and then we can make the decision as to whether we do it. Now, what I'm trying to do is draft some wording that allows us to do that. But I mean, can I ask if the committee understands and is in agreement that actually we need to kind of do this in two limbs? We've got to give ourselves the power to do it before we can actually discuss this individual instance. Councillor Johnson and Councillor Horsley, I wonder what because this is a technical question. So does that make sense?
It makes sense to me. If I just may speak, Councillor Horsley, my only query is that on question 9, the application says, describe the project's activity you plan to use this grant for, and it says venue rental for 5 concerts during 2020. Because that has now passed.
Yes, I think it's clear enough that we would now take that as referring to concerts by the end of 2021 to 2.
But I think this is
I don't think there's a problem there.
I think this is Councillor Pinder's argument. We need to actually ensure that we have some wording to ensure that we are allowed to fire that money across.
Absolutely right, yes.
If I could, Mr. Chair, the application, the original application, as you explained, Councillor Horsley, was submitted just before lockdown, because we didn't know that things were going to be locked down. So it was aimed for 2020. Then when we asked people if they still want their application to be considered, but with any alterations because of lockdown, submit sheet of A4, that's what the introductory sheet, page 7, page 8 of the agenda package. So none of the applicants at the time actually changed their forms, but provided additional information to encourage us to support them, given the changes.
Thank you.
Councillor Pinder.
I've just put some wording in the chat to help us actually with the first bit of this.
I think that's
because if we accept that, then we can actually have a discussion about the application. We can legitimately make that decision, but we keep them separate, which I think is the right way to do it.
Yes, the decision in principle is made first, and then the decision as to whether to do it.
Has everybody been able to read it, or would you like me to read it out, because I've got multiple screens on the go?
Read it out, please.
Yeah. Notwithstanding that the application by Beverley Male Voice Choir was not brought before the recent grant application, and given that it is unclear why their application was not properly received by Beverley Town Council, this matter having been brought before the Policy and Finance Committee for consideration as a standalone application for funding, the committee accepts that it is willing to consider the application on that basis.
I'm happy to second
yes.
that.
I would just add one phrase: the funds being available from the Grants Committee application, from the Grants Committee allocation.
We do, Mr. Chair, have the grant pot for this current financial year hasn't been used up, so there is money there. Regardless of when they did apply, we will have funding to support it.
Yeah. Okay. Can we move to a vote on that?
Mr. Chair, I believe Councillor Pinder's indicated to talk.
Well, we can either do it that way, or we can put it in. If we agree to give them the money, that's the point at which we need to worry about where it comes from. So I would suggest that if we agree to support them, we say, and the money be taken from, as in this committee agrees that, this application be accepted and the money be taken from. It's just that's why I held back, because I thought there's no point saying.
Okay, so we'll take it in 2 stages. And where it's taken from, we can vote on at the same time that we vote on whether it's taken anyway.
So we should vote through first, and then I think.
Oh, yes, exactly.
Councillor Johnson seconded it. So, yeah.
Yes,
Any
Mr.
wish to
Chair,
speak on this?
I've got Councillor Pinder's proposal, proposed by Councillor Pinder, seconded by Councillor Johnson.
Right, very good. Can we vote on that? Sorry, can we vote on that?
Everybody voted in favour, Mr. Chair.
Oh, sorry. As I say, my screen's decided to steam up so that I can't see things very well. Just the wrong time for it. Okay, so that's clear enough. So now, does anybody wish to speak on the actual nature of the application? And we understand that Linda is now has a hand over her mouth, so to speak.
Councillor
Thomas
Dell.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I take Councillor Pinder's point from before, but I think the application is more than worthy, and just would like to propose that we accept the application and we award them the funds from the allocation that we haven't spent this year.
I'd like to second. I'll second that, Mr. Chair. I think that the Male Voice Choir is a credit to the town. It's in line with all our traditions. Its music is wonderful, and I think this is precisely the sort of organisation that Beverley Town Council should be supporting. They're the very fabric of what we are as a town, and of course there's a sort of the churches and the environments in which they sing and which they perform are sort of splendid in themselves. So I would definitely like to second that and move that we give them this £1,000.
Before we vote, it might just be worth noting that the Male Voice Choir does, of course, make money at these concerts and passes it on immediately to some suitable charity, which is advertised at the time that the concert itself is advertised. So, so any funds, although they do make some money, it's passed on immediately to suitable Beverley charities.
Mr. Chair, I believe Councillor Pinder wishes to speak again.
Yeah,
I just
Councillor
want to
Pinder.
make, at the risk of becoming the Lawrence Cheney of the Policy Committee, I would like to also add, I totally endorse what Councillor Estelle, the younger but more eminent, and Councillor Healy have said. And that is that another aspect of this that I think is worth bearing in mind is that a lot of the members, I know the choir very well, a lot of the members are, if I make with all due respect, are older people, and COVID has particularly affected, and isolation has especially affected many older people, and these kind of groups where people come together communally, especially through the arts, I think are hugely important. And I would ask, just for interest, I don't know if you saw that the New York Opera have actually been, their vocal coaches have been doing lessons online to help people suffering from long COVID with their breathing. So right. I think they're just good for fighting isolation, and it's all good for our breathing. We should go and take a lesson from them on our breathing. So
yes.
Thank you.
Okay, can we vote on that then? Voting. I propose, or I suspect saying that all voting.
That's unanimous, Mr. Chair.
Very good. And so we go on to the question of where the funds come from. And I think we more or less understood that the money is there under the Grants Committee, and that seems to be the appropriate place to take the funds from.
I did propose that in my motion.
Yes,
Chair.
but
I did say.
But we'd more or less agreed that we would take the two issues separately.
No, we agreed that we was taking the how we was going to do it separately from the original proposal of just accepting it, not where the money was coming from.
Okay.
I put that in with my motion before, Chair.
Can I check with the Deputy Town Clerk? Which way
Yeah,
did you understand it?
Yeah, the first proposal was the principle to support it and how we can support it. The organisationally, the second was to support it using the appropriate funds. So everything's been covered in those.
So that was clear enough. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I'll hand the chair back to Linda, because the next issue, although it's another part of 7, has no effect whatsoever on Tolgable.
Thank you, Councillor Horsley. I'm sure the Beverley Male Voice Choir will be absolutely delighted that we voted, or you voted to support them again, and absolutely they are an absolute credit to our town, and they do such a lot and give such a lot of pleasure as well to people who go and listen to them. So thank you for that. Can we move on to 7B, please? So the Strategic Partnership Grants Agreement has taken the Deputy Town Clerk some little while to come this far, and he presents this to us for our comments. Hopefully you've all had a chance to have a look at this, and I wonder if there are any additions or alterations you would wish to add to the Strategic Partnership Grants Agreement. Do we have any comments? I think my observations would be that the ambassador from the Town Council should be a member of the Grants Committee or co-opted to it. It should be an appropriate councillor with relevant skills who is able to add something to the organisation that they are working with, and also somebody who's very enthusiastic about that particular organisation. So they would just be my observations. Are there any other comments, or would you wish to agree that that this piece of work that Matt has done should be accepted? So could
if I could, Madam Chair, so I'll just revise it to strengthen in the sections where it's about an ambassador from the Grants Committee. So therefore, they know within the agreement which committee they will be liaising with as well.
Yes, yes, please. Thank you, Councillor Tom Astell.
Thanks, Chair. I think it's very well put together from Matt, and I move that it goes to the. I propose it to be accepted.
Thank you, Councillor Astell. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Pinder. Can we vote on that? Yeah, that's carried. Thank you very much. And can I just echo what Thomas said with regard to the work that that Matt has put into this. Let's move on to 7C, and this is just a discussion or a comment with regard to whether we should be having deadline submissions for the small and general grants, or whether we should invite submissions all the time so that we don't have this rush of submissions at the last minute. Whether this should be something we look at as an ongoing issue, although clearly the Grants Committee will have to have dates at which they are going to meet. Councillor Pinder.
I think you're right. We do need a kind of deadline, but I think it's a question of wording, that rather than saying the deadline is, and then they'll rush it, we can say any submissions received after X date will be considered at the Grants Committee meeting of, which says the same thing, but might actually not cause the same level of everyone banging it in 2 days before. That's all I would suggest.
Yes, Deputy Town Clerk.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. It was just to say that because we've not produced the calendar yet, we're working on that later this month for the next municipal year. We don't have those dates in place yet, and it may be that the council feel that because in the past it's been 2 grants meeting a year, because historically the budget was split over two sets of 6 months. However, this council is very proactive about the grant system, so it may be that more than 2 meetings are required to fulfil the need, and to be fair to all the external groups. So the sort of wording that Councillor Pinder suggests it's softer kind of wording than deadlines, and would hopefully would encourage more people to apply. When you do put a deadline date in, and a very harsh way how it's described, it can panic people and put them off. And so we could tailor that. Once we've got the meeting schedule in place, we could then tailor the deadlines, but also encourage people to submit them at any point, and they will be viewed at the next appropriate meeting. Because we don't want to put anybody off for any reason, but we also need to make sure that we're following our own rules to logistically apply our money.
Thank you, Matt. With regard to, now that we have our partnership grants paperwork as well, we need to also consider whether the grants meeting will consider partnership grant applications as well. So it might be appropriate to have more than 2 meetings a year. In fact, it might be much more appropriate to have 3 meetings a year. Yes, Councillor Pinder.
I just wonder whether, in fact, we actually set ourselves an in target that if we receive, once we've received 6 applications, we call a meeting, or applications up to an amount. I don't think it matters how we do it, because it would also help us with the problem of having these meetings where we've got, 15 applications to wade through, and we all lose the will to live by the end of it. I think we'd probably make better decisions that way, actually. It's just a suggestion, I don't know.
Councillor Astell, Tom.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. However, I do think that we do need to be mindful about the number of meetings that the grants committee could potentially be having. I think it would be good to set a limit. I probably would be mindful to say maybe once a quarter rather than twice a year. So, and then that's 4. I mean, realistically, how many applications we're going to be receiving in every quarter? So that probably would match what Councillor Pinder has said. If we think about 15 applications divided by 2, it's around about the 6 figure. So I just think that just limits the meetings. Otherwise, we could be having 6 applications in a couple of months and then none for quite a long period of time. So you could be having quite a number of meetings scheduled at once. So that's what my point would be.
Thank you. Tom, Councillor Horsley.
Thanks very much, Tom. I think those points make sense. But I would point out also that in this first year of partnership grants, we may have a larger number of grants that need careful consideration than we will have in future years, in that people will be applying to become partners. And what's become apparent to us as we've begun looking more seriously at this issue of partnerships is that some of the people asking for partnerships won't actually be asking us for any significant amount of money, because their aim is to have a good relationship with the town council and to have the town council's backing in applications they may be making to other bodies.
Thank you, Councillor Horsley. And Deputy Town Clerk.
Yeah, just if I could just comment on what Councillor Estelle suggested. One of the issues, I think, is that when there's only every 6 months, everybody sees one deadline and everybody applies because there's another half year to wait. If they're scheduled quarterly and promoted as such, it will encourage, sorry, I'm thinking this lady, I think I might have disappeared visually. It will encourage people to spread their applications out throughout the year and make it a lot more manageable. If people know there's only 3 months to go and they're still working on their application, it will hopefully make it more manageable as well that way.
Thank you, Matt. Tom Estelle.
Thanks, Chair. I just also wanted to make a point about the partnership grants. I think it's a good idea that they are decided at the grants committee, but can I just suggest that due to the strategic nature of the partnership grants, that any decision made to award monies to partners is ratified by full council.
That is an excellent suggestion. Thank you. I think there are lots of nods there, and I think as well that full council would be very pleased to hear about people who want to become partners with the. I
think it's a good idea that the actual discussion and the detail is sounded out at grants day. Then a report is just presented as to the reasons why these organisations deserve to become partners of the town council, who's going to be the ambassador, etc., etc. And it's just literally, here you go, please ratify. But I do think it's important that that process is done, because they are very strategic natured grants, and that they are going to be for quite a long period of time. So yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Pinder.
Yeah, I would completely endorse that. I think that the grants committee does the spade work, but I think given the nature of the relationship, I absolutely endorse what Councillor Stella said. I think that's absolutely the way we should do it.
Perhaps Deputy Town Clerk, that could be added into the partnership grants agreement as well, just to confirm that this is going to be endorsed by full council.
Yeah, absolutely.
We think these are so important and so key to the development of the town council and other organisations in the town going forward, that they will be presented at town council, at the full council meeting. Thank you. Are there any other comments? Yes, Councillor Peter Astell.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to pick up on what the Mayor said about once a quarter meetings, I would like, through you, Chair, for Matt, the Deputy Clerk, to take that into consideration when you're doing your calendar of meetings, but not only that, to look at reporting back to a suitable full council meeting, in doing so, because of the staffing issues that may or may not be a problem for you.
Yeah, I could comment on that, Madam Chair. Yeah, we just, I can't speak. Strategically place the meetings so there's enough time between the meeting, the grants meeting, and the full council meeting to pull everything together, and we'll factor that in when we're putting together a draft meeting calendar later this month.
And I think, yes, I think you're absolutely right, Councillor Astell, that the ambassador reports back to the grants meeting as often as they feel it important that they should be reporting back. Councillor Horsley.
I think that if we're thinking about 4 meetings a year, we should consider that the first meeting, or the first of those meetings, should not be in May. We should leave enough time for the council to settle into existence for the new year before the first meeting, and that the last meeting should be no later than late February, so that the decision having been made, it can be effective before the end of the year if that is necessary.
And that is wise advice, Councillor Horsley. I think there's lots of nods there. As ever, that's very sound counsel. Thank you for that. Any other comments? No, I think it's really exciting that we're moving forward in this way, and I thank everybody for your participation this evening. There are no further agenda items and nobody has indicated that they wish to speak on any subject. Do we need to have a proposer and a seconder for that last discussion, Councillor, Deputy Town Clerk?
I think we've got the general gist of it. It was a discussion about which direction to take, and I think there'll be more of a decision made when it's actually seen diarised in the calendar. But if councils do want to make an official proposal and second it, that's fine as well.
Thank you. I think there's just one other point I wanted to make, and that is, of course, if there is no business, even though a meeting is planned, an agenda is not put together or called within 5 days of a meeting, that meeting doesn't have to take place. So with regard to anything that's diarised, it's not actually in stone. And of course, we can always call an emergency meeting if we find that we need to going forward. So thank you very much for your participation, everybody. Oh, Councillor Pinder, you wanted to comment?
Just very quickly, I did put, going back to the Beverley Male Voice Choir, I put a second limb in the chat.
So you did.
To see if everyone's happy with that. I mean, it expresses what we were talking about. I just think, yeah.
Yeah, I've copied those because they summarise the proposals and seconders.
I think all I put was propose that Beverley Town Council was the full amount. I think it was 995, wasn't it? The Male Voice Choir, and that the monies be paid from monies otherwise assigned for the disposal of the grants committee. Does that? I think that covers what we agreed, doesn't it?
Yes.
Everyone happy with that? Okay, fine.
Yeah, thank you. So there being no further business, I would like to call this meeting of the Policy and Finance Committee of Beverley Town Council to a close at 7:22 p.m. Thank you all.